Folks, we got some rumors in the coaching circle, and it all has to deal with these two fellas right here, Matt LaFleur, the current Green Bay Packers head coach, and Vance Joseph, the current Denver Broncos defensive coordinator. And if they could be the potential replacement for Mike McDaniel if Miami fires McDaniel this upcoming offseason. Well, let's start with LaFleur because you're going to see this and you're going to be like, what are you talking about, Nick? Are you dumb or are you stupid? And I'm going to counter with, I don't think he is going to be fired, and I'll explain why. But a reporter for the Packers, after the loss to the Eagles on Monday Night Football, tweeted that he might be coaching for his job the rest of the season. And I wanted to read this little part of his article for you guys. The number 7 seed in premature playoff exits might be good enough elsewhere, but not here. There are 8 regular season games left plus playoffs, and there's plenty of football for LaFleur to convince first-year team president Ed Policy that extending him is undoubtedly the right move. LaFleur has this season and next remaining on his contract, but Policy chose not to extend LaFleur before this season. Policy also doesn't want them in contract years, meaning a decision on their futures could very well come after this season. And that is a fascinating statement there that if the Packers decide not to extend LaFleur, they likely will just fire him this offseason and hire a new head coach on a multi-year contract. I do not think the Packers will fire Matt LaFleur because, in my opinion, I think he's one of the 10 best coaches in the National Football League. I understand that Green Bay hasn't gotten the job done since he became their head coach in 2019, and they've had some really good rosters, including a pair of MVP seasons under Aaron Rodgers, and then obviously the past couple of years with Jordan Love. But I just have a hard time imagining an organization firing a head coach that has had as much success as LaFleur has had in Green Bay. But if the Packers did the unthinkable and ultimately parted ways with LaFleur, I don't care if McDaniel runs the table and goes 10-7 this season. You absolutely fire Mike McDaniel and hire Matt LaFleur if you get the inkling that there is even a 50% chance Matt LaFleur would want to become the next head coach for the Miami Dolphins, because he is a sensational offensive mind, I think better than Mike McDaniel, and he is a sensational head coach as well. More coming here on LaFleur, but if you want more Miami Dolphins posts and content like Reels, well, follow us over on Instagram. At Dolphins Today IG is our handle. Posting Reels there every day in between our YouTube content. I mentioned a little bit earlier that Matt LaFleur was hired as head coach in 2019 for the Green Bay Packers and has had, in my opinion, a ton of success. He's made the playoffs in every year but one. That was in 2022. That would be 2022 when they went 8-9. But in his first 3 years as head coach, still Aaron Rodgers was there. They won 13 games in all 3 of those years and won the division in all 3 of those years. Now, you've had a couple shaky years here post Aaron Rodgers with Jordan Love and company where you've missed the playoffs. You've barely made the playoffs at 9-8, and then last year was third in the NFC North, really competitive division, and finished 11-6. This year, so far, the Packers are 5-3-1 and currently third in the NFC North behind the Lions and Bears, who are both 6-3. I do expect that to change. I don't think the Bears and Lions will stay ahead of the Packers for the entire season, but the Packers have been one of the largest disappointments in the NFL this season. I mean, myself, and many included, believed the Packers were going to win the entire NFC this year. I mean, you could find the video. I was asked of my Super Bowl prediction at the beginning of the year, and I said it was the Ravens over the Packers in the Super Bowl. And let's just call a spade a spade. The Packers have looked pretty bland this year. They have. So maybe there is a little bit of burnout with LaFleur in Green Bay. This is his 7th season, and they haven't really gotten over that finish line. They've been to the NFC Championship game, but couldn't get past Tom Brady and company, couldn't get past some others, and have come up short under LaFleur. And is he going to be blamed and ultimately fired? Who knows? But I would still hire him. What say you? Would you replace Mike McDaniel with Matt LaFleur if LaFleur got canned? Pinned comment on today's show, type Y for yes or type N for no. As I mentioned a little bit ago, there is not a world that we live in where I would rather have Mike McDaniel over Matt LaFleur. I think both are offensive geniuses, if you will. I think LaFleur is better, and his offense is more sustainable and less gimmicky, if you will, more north-south, get down, predicate on the run game. They want to run the football. They have a good offensive line. They have a top running back, and they set that up with the ability to have high-level play-action plays. Like, LaFleur's a good football coach, man. He just absolutely is. And you don't have the success he's had over the last 6-7 years without him being a good football coach and have consistent success they've had. Let's move over from Matt LaFleur now to Vance Joseph. Coming up in just 1 second. Is he a top candidate to potentially replace Mike McDaniel if Miami ultimately moved on after the season? This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, though. You and I make decisions every day. The right to sit down on PrizePicks can get you paid, and with the weather changing, nothing changes like being right on PrizePicks. You can get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5. Keep the season rolling on PrizePicks. Just pick more or less and at least 2-player stats. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. How you play is up to you. You want flexibility? Choose the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter your play, PrizePicks is a great way to put your takes to the test. I have an entry in for this game on Sunday between Miami and Washington. More than Devon Achane receiving yards, more than Marcus Mariota interceptions, and less than Tua Tagovailoa 31 pass attempts. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. The reason why we're talking about Vance Joseph as a potential option for Miami is because a recent article that Miami or ESPN put out about the latest rumors in the head coaching circle, it got a major bump because of the firing of Brian Daboll earlier this week. This isn't a Dolphins-related thing, just more of a league-wide thing. But ESPN's Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano said that the league is very impressed with what Broncos defensive coordinator Vance Joseph is doing in Denver. Remember, this is a weird situation for Joseph. He was the head coach in Denver for 2017 and 2018. Or is it 16, 17? Get my years confused. But he was ultimately let go. He goes and becomes the Arizona Cardinals defensive coordinator and then rejoins the Denver Broncos as defensive coordinator. Not often do you see a head coach of a team get fired and ultimately return to that organization as a coordinator. Very weird situation. But I think that also speaks to the character of Vance Joseph. He wasn't scared. He wasn't so prideful that he said, I would never go back to the Broncos because they fired me as head coach. That impresses me. That just tells me that he is all about what's good for his brand, right? And he cares about winning. And he viewed the Broncos at the time of being hired as the best spot for him to make a difference in the NFL. And he's only had one of the best defenses, if not the best defenses, over the past 3 or 4 seasons with the Denver Broncos. Like, I think his ability to put his pride to the side and go back to Denver speaks to the type of character Vance Joseph has. And in his 2 years with Denver, to be honest, like, it might have been a little bit of a quick hook here, folks, because he went 5-11 and 6-10 in his first 2 years. And yeah, those aren't groundbreaking elite seasons. I'm not trying to say that they were, but to be fired after only being a head coach for 2 years, to me, you have to be absolutely atrocious. And you have to have a dysfunctional organization. I don't really remember Denver being dysfunctional in this time period. And taking over a roster that was pretty bad and dealing with Drew Lock at quarterback, it could have been a lot worse than 5-11 and 6-10, in my opinion. And the defenses in Denver were always still good in that time period. Remember, this is a player or a guy who was with the Miami Dolphins in the past. He was a coordinator defensively for Miami in 2016. So he has familiarity with the Miami Dolphins system, Stephen Ross. Obviously not it would be a different GM making the decisions, but he's been in Miami before as a defensive coordinator. So would he want to return to be the head coach? That's very, very possible. More coming here, but all the latest coaching rumors on the Miami Dolphins will be found at this channel. We'll have you updated in the offseason, and if the Dolphins keep McDaniel, fire McDaniel, hire someone else, we'll have you updated and be live on the channel for it all. Subscribe and turn on notifications. But we talked about a Benjamin Albright kind of idea about the Dolphins already deciding on a GM earlier in this week. Well, I wanted to go back to him again here as an insider with the Denver Broncos. Said that he believes that Vance Joseph is going to be significantly better in his second go-around as head coach, and he cited the ability to pick his own coaching staff because he wasn't allowed to do that in Denver the first time, and he will probably get a larger input on players that he's always specialized in. Like, let's be honest here. Vance Joseph knows how to get the best out of talent defensively. And if you get Vance Joseph into the building with whoever this new GM is, potentially, you can have those two collaborate on who to bring in on the defensive side of the ball. And now the GM would more or less focus probably on the offensive side with other offensive coaches. But Vance Joseph working with the new GM for the defensive players, I think would have a very quick turnaround in Miami with their ability to be a defensively led team. Because Vance Joseph has always been an elite defensive coordinator and always coached a good defensive unit. And he is on my short list. Like, if you had to ask me who I would want to replace Mike McDaniel if Miami fires him in January, he is certainly on my list of 5 guys. And I've said this in the past, and I'll say it again. My 5 that are very short, and I don't want this construed, by the way, that I want a defensive coordinator only. Because 4 out of my 5 guys on my short list are defensive coordinators. I just think when you look at the best head coach candidates this cycle that aren't fired, so like obviously it would change if like a LaFleur or a Tomlin or a John Harbaugh got moved on from, but the guys that are currently available, these are my 5. I think Mike McCarthy is the only offensive-minded guy I would want. I think he would be good to stabilize this organization and instill a culture as a longtime successful head coach. But Robert Saleh, Vance Joseph, 2 former head coaches that are current defensive coordinators on 2 really good defensive teams. And then Jesse Minter, Chris Schuler, if you want to go a younger first-time head coach route, defensive coordinator for the Rams and the Chargers, respectively. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and act like Vance Joseph is my number 1 target of people that are currently available because that's not true. My number 1 guy, and I've been saying this for a while, is Rob Saleh from the 49ers because he, I think, got the raw end of the deal in New York with the Jets. I think a lot of those issues had to deal with Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback, Zach Wilson being the quarterback for his entire tenure there, and the GMing of Ryan Douglas or Joe Douglas. Forget whatever that guy's name is. He was atrocious. Either way, like I think Saleh got blamed for all of the shortcomings there in New York. I think he would be great as a head coach his second time around. And Saleh has a lot of good offensive-minded friends in this league as well that he would be able to hire an elite offensive coordinator, in my opinion, and Saleh handle the defense. I think Saleh would be my top option, but Vance Joseph is certainly there alongside Mike McCarthy. Pick someone that you want to replace Mike McDaniel. And maybe you want to keep Mike. That's a very fair. But let's see. If the Dolphins fired Mike McDaniel, who would you want as the replacement? Drop a name. Now, I did want to drop these 5 guys on the show because these are not people for me. These are lists on ESPN. So ESPN had that article highlighting Vance Joseph, but they also highlighted 5 other names that I wanted to share for you guys. Jeff Hafley, the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator. Steve Spagnuolo, the current defensive coordinator for the Chiefs. Joe Brady, offensive coordinator for the Bills. Arthur Smith, former head coach in the NFL, OC of the Steelers. And then Marcus Freeman, the Notre Dame head coach. I would be all in on Marcus Freeman to be the next head coach for the Dolphins. I think he would easily make that jump. He's a great leader. I think he's a great strategist. Making up words, folks. Jeff Hafley is interesting. He's got a lot of buzz, but I like Marcus Freeman. All right, final word on today's show. We're talking a lot about the head coach and coaching rumors today, rightfully so, with that little article that came out. But I still believe it is in the Dolphins' best interest to hire a new GM and let him decide on what you want to do at head coach. But I do still lean firing Mike McDaniel. I know some people are in on keeping McDaniel for another year because of Tua's contract and how they believe Chris Grier is one to blame, not Mike McDaniel. I just think when you hire a GM and you keep the current head coach, unless it's like an elite proven head coach, which Mike McDaniel is not, it creates a sloppy kind of rhythm. And we saw that with the Titans, where you hire a head coach, keep the same GM, fire the GM, keep the head coach. Oh, fire the head coach, keep the GM, hire a new head coach. Oh, now we're firing the GM. Like, you don't want them to be on the different page. You want everybody to be on the same page. So hiring a GM and letting him hire a new head coach this offseason, I still think is the best way to kind of fast track this rebuild if you want it to go quicker sooner rather than later. That'll do it for today's show. We asked you to follow us on Instagram. Make sure you follow me over on Twitter as well. @Nick_Roloff is my handle.